Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, hosted by Alison Humphries. The Recruitment Leadership Podcast is here to help those in the recruitment industry gain awareness and understanding on the hot topics faced by those in the business of hiring people. In each episode, Alison Humphries is joined by a fellow expert to offer professional knowledge, insight and advice on the biggest subjects affecting recruitment businesses. It's the podcast to listen to for recruitment business frontrunners seeking expert information from industry-leading advisors. Welcome to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. I'm your host, Alison Humphries, and today I am delighted to be joined by an old friend, Will Bourne of Rekall Consulting and now Rekbot. Welcome, Will. It's taken us a few goes to get this far, but we're here now. Nice to have you. Will is an experienced recruiter of 15 years who has been MD of Rekall Consulting. He's been a top biller in several fintech recruitment businesses and started his own business and ran that for 5 years. And where we're going today is to show you his latest development, which is Rekbot. Now, will tell you more shortly, and we're going to have a short demo of some of its features. But Rekbot is a unique AI-based training
platform.
creation.
A platform, an AI platform to learn.
An AI platform specifically for training recruiters in an interactive way, which I think is going to blow your socks off. Now, listeners, if you can, please enable video on this because I don't want you to miss Will's demo. It's really important to bring a product to life. But what I'd like to start with is just some positioning about what led you, Will, to create this new proposition. And I guess, what you've seen in your career going wrong with training in the recruitment industry.
So, as you kindly pointed out, I've got 15 years of recruitment experience, which is, I think, like dog years. I'm over 100 years old now.
God, what does that make me, Will?
Well, we dare say. Rekbot was born in my own pain in that time. So in 15 years, like you say, I started off in a boutique headhunting agency. They had a very good training program, very good onboarding program, and generated some pretty good recruiters. And I was there 5 years and did quite well there. And then I started my first company, which was a funded startup. And since then, I was MD of Rekall Consulting, like you say, which was a large fintech organization, managers of managers, large teams, P&L, contract, and perm. And the latest startup was my own, bootstrapped. Now, across all of those different company types, when I was training and hiring people, and even trying to get experienced recruiters to upskill, it was very challenging. And the key challenges that I faced was I either do it myself, or I get my top performers to become trainers, which is a very large cost center very quickly. I bring in an external trainer to come and spend a day or two with the guys, or I would subscribe to a self-serve platform where you pay a monthly subscription and you expect your team to log on and watch a video and learn, very passive post-event. I found all of them to be inefficient in different ways and quite costly. So where I got to in the end was quite a high level of frustration in terms of, why am I not seeing significant improvements in people's capabilities despite all the time and effort and money that I'm putting into their training and development. So this is just about the time where AI was becoming a little bit more interactive and programmable by just basic people like me. So I actually programmed a conversational app which played the role of a client that you would cold call into. And it took me days and days and days to kind of get the prompts right and to get the engineering of it right so that it was hostile. So it was very rude, it was very abrupt, and it was like a heat seeker for value. Because what I used with some of the general AI conversational tools, it was very passive, it's very polite, it will continue talking to you until you hang up, which you and I both know in a cold call in a customer situation, how quickly it tells someone F off.
Just not that realistic. Fascinating. Can I just cut in there?
Yeah.
I think, your very first point underlines for me a major problem, and it's to do with the lack of understanding of what learning is. There's still quite a number of well-known names in the recruitment industry that seem to think lecturing is learning, or that it happens automatically.
Yeah.
And what we know, because there's plenty of science into learning now, what we know is that real lasting changes of behaviour, which is the only way you've really learned anything, isn't it?
Yep.
Comes from a reflective cycle of try something out, reflect on how well it worked, adjust, try again. And so when you told me, Will, about what you were developing, I was very excited because it can progress at the pace of the learner and keep them engaged in a way that's, let's face it, it's challenging the way you've designed it.
Yeah.
But it's the kind of scenarios that if somebody can deal with those, then they'll be very confident dealing with the real thing.
The key, what you say there, is it's the reinforcement of the learning, and this is where the typical and antiquated ways that people learn in recruitment are now falling short. Because if you get a day rate trainer in, you might get them for a week, or you might have them on a retainer once a month. The reinforcement cycle is too long. And there's a study, it's called the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve. And if it's not reinforced, this learning within a certain time frame, it's forgotten up to 90%. So 90% of that investment literally disappears within 24 hours. And this is the way people are expected to learn, like you say, very lecture, kind of passive post-event learning. So the benefit of AI now is that you can create a structure that constantly reinforces the learning. It will constantly nudge, it will constantly kind of prompt a learner to say, right, you haven't checked in for a day or two, it's time that we, let's run another scenario. I'm going to up the level on you, let's get yourself ready. Because that for me is the key. It's about putting people into an uncomfortable situation. So you invoke an emotion, because once you attach an emotion to a learn, it solidifies that learning. Then you reinforce it constantly, which is the principle of what I'm trying to build.
Okay, yeah, thank you. It's an important point, this, about reinforcement repetition. So, back in the day, I used to run training events as where they drop out of my non-exec work. And people who think that is the change, that event is what creates the change, are disappointed, aren't they? It's actually down to implementation, which is not just about repetition. Of course, it's about creating systems that reinforce it. It's about creating incentives to put things into action if necessary. So traditional training interventions were only ever the start of a change. And so this repetition is absolutely critical to make sure that that change becomes embedded, as you say. There's also a widespread expectation in the recruitment industry, and it's partly led from the fact that we are almost entirely small and micro businesses, and therefore most businesses are only taking on one or two people at a time. So what do? They don't have the infrastructure to develop training for one or two people, so they never do it. So they send people on open courses where they're in a virtual meeting room or a real one with people from different companies, and that what happens there is that the training, or the learning rather, has to move to the lowest common denominator. It's not applied to very particular circumstances, so what you're getting is a sort of, it does 50%.
It's a diluted version of the training, right? And typically what happens post-event there is that person will be in touch with the group asking for their advice. So the actual reinforcement of learning doesn't come from the trainer, it comes from the peer group. Because people seek reinforcement of learning. Like they'll either do it through badgering the trainer after the event or the people that were in there. We can do that with AI now.
A couple of other things that I observe is that imparting knowledge is a very limited part of the whole cycle. Assessing implementation is key, isn't it? Which is something I love about the product you're about to show us. And the other piece that it avoids is the absolute classic, which is trying to train everything all at once. And this still exists. There are organizations that send people away for a 2-week residential at the beginning of their career and expect them to come out as a 5-year experienced recruiter without actually having tried to do those things. So there's
Yeah,
a
it's
lot to be
taken.
fixed, isn't there?
There is really, and like what I've seen really, because over the last 6 months that I've been kind of testing this concept with recruitment leaders and TA leaders, there's a hesitancy now in the agency space to hire anybody with less than 2 years of experience because people are so scared and unaware of how to effectively get people properly assessed and onboarded and then trained, to get quick ROI out of them. Which for me is a shame really, because there's going to be a lot of people that can come from adjacent industries. Some of the best hires I've ever made have come from adjacent industries, and they very quickly transitioned into recruitment. But you have to give them a structured training program. You have to show them the ropes, and you have to get them to feel the ropes to then quickly evolve. And again, that's where the success that I had with the app that I made, the very first concept version of this, was so effective, because it would hang up on people. The lady, she was a female voice, and she was like, look, you're not demonstrating any value to me, and hang up. And I'd say, try again. And they'd have to do the pitch again. They'd have to go through, why they're adding value, until they got to the end of the call where they could close for an agreement. And they learned more doing that than the training material, than day rate trainers coming in, just from being able to talk to something that made them feel a certain way, and then, and then reinforce it. So if we can open that gap up, that 0 to 2 year gap, with something like this that people can just plug somebody into, we could change the market.
So I know that our listeners are going to be intrigued now. We'll come back after your demo, we'll come back to what recruitment bosses can expect by way of outcomes from implementing this. And listeners, please be aware that Will has a unique offer for listeners to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast, which, guess what, we'll tell you about at the end. So, Will, I'm going to hand over to you to explain the product, and you're going to demo a little bit for us as well.
Yeah, sure. So I'm going to ask everybody to be open-minded here. This is a concept that we're bringing out, a new idea, and this is the very first launch version of it. So there's 2 features that we're starting with. And the first feature is a call simulator, like I just explained. So what you can actually do is you can input your own candidates, your own roles, and then you can start to pre-select. You can see my screen, I assume.
Yes, we can.
Yeah, and then you can start to create the call as you want it to be. So in this example, I've uploaded a AWS solutions engineer, a contract position, and there's a list of candidates here that you can pick from. So you could open up Deb, for example, and start to see what her kind of her background is. Experienced program manager, so she wouldn't be right for that job. Senior infrastructure specialist would be right. So let's go with John. And we're going to cold call John on this initial screening, and we can pick the kind of personality we want him to have. So these are just some of the early ones that we've put in, where we can say, let's make him a professional guy, and you effectively go into the call. Now, I don't know if you're going to be able to hear. Will you be able to hear through the mic?
Well, let's give it a go.
Can you hear the ringing?
I can hear it dialing in.
Hi there, this is John Arman. I wasn't expecting a call. Would you mind telling me who this is?
John, hi, this is Will. I'm calling from Rekall Consulting. I'm a recruiter, actually, and I'm hoping you're conveniently placed to have a quick chat. So what it would effectively do at this point now is run through a conversation, simulate the call, and these are the kind of structures that we want people to run through and to be assessed by. Okay. Over here are some of the milestones to help. So John would effectively talk to me. You can open his profile here and see what his CV is, and you can see the job description for a reference point over here. So you can kind of know what you're talking about.
Okay, and on the left of the screen now, that your interview structure, those are the criteria by which you're assessing how well this call goes. Yep. Yeah,
this is going to be like the skeleton. So post call, you're going to get the skeleton, right? Did you tick all of these key boxes? And I thought long and hard about what the typical structure of a recruitment conversation looks like. You've got to get the intro and the rapport, discovery. You've got to make sure that the roles aligned. Then you've got to do the assessment of the person, whether they're a technical or if it's a skills-based role. You've got to make sure they fit the culture of the team and the business. You've got to get the housekeeping done. Then you've got to close, make sure you've got some next steps. So what it'll do is score and assess the skeleton first of all, and then the meat on the bones as well. Okay. So if we end the call, I know we haven't done a proper call, but to save people's time and attention, what will now happen is it's going to piece together like the session data. So it's going to have got an understanding of the call analytics effectively, and it's going to build me a dashboard, which will just take a little moment. And this is where the like the feedback element of it comes in, so that you'll be able to kind of get a graph as to what's worked well, what hasn't worked so well, and where you can improve. So this is the dashboard that you'll get post call. And this summary made a polite initial introduction, but failed to progress the conversation beyond the candidate's initial inquiry. So it's going to give me a little bit of a beat down there. And these are the kind of things that it's going to score me against if we was to do a proper call that would, perhaps take 10, 15 minutes.
Of course.
The question quality, the flow of the conversation, the job alignment, the experience for the candidate, and was there any bias detected? I'll give you a little graph here.
Could you just explain that? How would you assess bias in a call like that?
What it's going to effectively do is think about the kind of questions that are being asked, and it will be about interruptions, any kind of diversity. Are you a male? Are you a female? If it asks anything about religion or anything that could potentially be, classed as a bias, it's going to just to give you some feedback on, and you'll get your breakdowns in here. So the question quality, I didn't ask any questions, obviously. So didn't ask any questions about the AWS, but because it's understood the job description, it knows what kind of questions that really you should be probing on, which if we were to go back to the screen on the call, on the suggestions box on the right, it was like, you might want to ask about Terraform, or you might want to ask about X, you might want to ask about Z. And it will say here, right, you didn't cover anything, basically. This is a 0 out of 5 call. Now,
if I can interrupt just a second, Will.
Sure.
I know that people will be thinking, this looks great, but like a lot of AI-enabled tech, is it going to be such a gargantuan task to upload realistic scenarios for my business that we never do it properly, which is common with lots of new AI applications? How long do you think a business could expect to need to upload enough material for it to really work for their business?
Straight away. So it will work straight away. Like there's no like training the Rekbot where it's going to be done for the first week or two. You're going to get your money's worth from day one, because what is actually in the LLM is probably 20,000-30,000 hours of recruitment specific content that has taken me quite a long time to piece together. So everything Rekbot knows is recruitment specific.
So but if users want to, perhaps they specialize in a particular type of tech, then they presumably will need to upload some job descriptions and some candidate profiles that fit their market, yeah?
And that's where I wanted it to be nuanced. So no two recruitment companies are the same, no two roles are the same, right? So we've got to build this tool in such a way that it can mimic as closely as humanly possible what that conversation flow is going to feel like. And it's going to get more intuitive. Every conversation that it has with me in the training lab, some of my friends who are using it, the early adopters, it's going to get more in tune to the markets. It can now already have a good conversation. So I've tested it in temp. So I've tested it with network engineering, logistics. In contract, I've tested it with technical engineers, and in perm, I've tested it with sales, project management, UX, UI, and it has very accurate conversations across all of those spectrums.
Right.
So it's able to click in straight away and only get better.
So we're learning for example, the buying signals for a particular type of profile, and got it. Thank you.
And the first version of it is the candidate version. So people coming onto it, first of all, the use case for them would be, if they're a talent acquisition specialist who's coming in to learn about the lingo, the way that people interact and talk within a specific market or location, and for recruiters who perhaps aren't getting max value out of their conversations, or they're new to industry. And it's funny, really, because the last 9 months that I've been kind of doing the product testing with people, I've gone into a lot of different recruitment companies and spoke to inexperienced and experienced recruiters, and there are huge gaps in both sides of the spectrum in terms of people's capability. This won't allow you to have the gap. The whole reason that I've made Rekbot was to really enhance the recruiter from a confidence and a capability perspective. And I didn't want to create an AI silver bullet, which is what everybody else is racing to make in recruitment. How can we replace and skim over people's weak points and their inexperiences by giving them a tool that does it for them? We want every recruiter that touches Rekbot to be able to have to maximize their potential.
Right. And it's interesting that we've, on earlier episodes of this podcast, we've referred to the issue, the unintended consequence of hiring experienced recruiters.
Yeah.
And that is obviously the assumption that, well, they billed X in their last employer, they must be really good. Yeah. And what we find is that very often they are just replicating whatever they learned in the last place.
Yeah.
And in a recent exercise with a client I was working with, a recruitment business owner, we actually asked a whole selection of his sales team to come in, one by one, and do a basic 15-minute discovery conversation with us as potential clients. And one of the things we found is that their actual, the point of difference they were using to position us against other recruiters they might be more familiar with was just whatever the last thing was they'd heard. It was really not taking account of the strengths of that business. So we got a lot of the usual, we like to build long-term relationships stuff. We pride ourselves on our deep relative history. And so I can see that even experienced people who might be, engaging with Rekbot and thinking, I'll ace this, find it very helpful to get
it'll
the
catch them out.
feedback.
It will catch them out.
Yeah.
Like you, Alison, I've spoken now to some businesses who have done very well, successful businesses, weathered the last 18 months, got through got through COVID. And I speak to some of their top performers and they're very transactional. They are very much, just square peg to square hole, contingent kind of recruitment, which is fine. It's got, it's a business that still works. But when I start asking the questions like, okay, what's your RPO ratio? What's your repeat business? What's your predictable revenue for the next 12 months from a perm perspective? People you can see the blood drain. And when I launch the client version, phase 2 of this, it's going to be able to push back on people and help people step out of that transactional recruitment model and start to become consultative. I can sell a statement of work, I can sell an augmented staff service, I can sell an RPO, I can sell retained business, and it's going to guide them on how to do it. I found it very challenging to get the value prop across to experienced recruiters because they've completed recruitment. Every top biller has completed it. They can't learn anything more possibly until I start pushing them, push their buttons around things like that. And
I know loads of business owners who, if only they could get their middling billers, and we know that figure, the billing of about 100k a year, where people just bobble along, has been static for 20 years. And if you could get those people to the place of the top billers in the market, your £500,000 billers, even get them halfway there, your business would be in a completely different place, wouldn't it?
Whilst at the same time reducing the training bill. If I'm giving people time back here, their top billers don't have to be trainers anymore. You don't have to bring an expensive day rate trainer in every single day of the week or every month. You've got a tool here which will effectively hold their hand. The second feature that I'll show you is the coaching zone. So the coaching zone is where all of the knowledge that I've developed over 15 years, and all of the content that's online that I've read, that I've kind of put into my own training material, I've put into this coaching zone. And you and I worked together, Alison, and I was a good biller, right? I sold a couple of RPOs, and
I can definitely vouch for that.
And all of the stuff that I implemented into how I set my business up from scratch. And we can talk numbers if you want. If you remember those 2 RPOs that generated over 700k for me when I was pretty much a solo biller, all of that is in here. So people can ask it questions. How do you approach an RPO? What's the killer questions to ask? It'll answer it for you. So the coaching zone, which I'll very quickly share with you, this is V1. So I want this effectively to be people's co-pilot. So Rekbot, Strategic Recruitment Advisor, and this is the LLM, which is not, this is not a ChatGPT plugin. This is plugged into my own LLM that I've made with all of the recruitment information, and you can ask it anything. how do you hire in the GCC? My call quality is low. How can I improve it? Pretty much anything it's going to be able to answer. So how can I sell an RPO? And it's going to start to really be able to get out of the office, where I'm sure enough people listening have had a new staff member come in and they ask somewhat silly questions, which to them is very important, but to you it's like a little bit of a nuisance. The coaching zone is going to give people the ability to just have a support function, a chat support function, where you can ask it literally anything and it will answer it. And it's very, very recruitment specific. So that's the coaching zone. So that's where I'm going to be able to help people, like in real time, give them the answers that they need.
And given the pressure that's on a lot of spot recruitment businesses now to try and innovate with what they're offering their clients, there is a gap there, isn't there? I know as I've successfully sold multi-million-pound statement of works deals, I know that almost nobody in core recruitment understands how to do that, what the differences are. So they approach it just like, 50 spot business jobs, rather than, than changing their whole pitch and delivery method. So just some examples of how people might use the coaching zone, Will?
It's anything really. Like it could be the day one recruiter who doesn't understand their market. They might not understand what this means in a CV. Instead of going to ChatGPT and perhaps getting some general responses, you can now use the coaching zone. The coaching zone is effectively a recruitment specific ChatGPT. All it knows is recruitment.
So that's really interesting. So you've developed the large language model here.
Yep.
Okay. So it's unique. And somebody made a very good point to me, at least I thought it was good because I hadn't thought of it before. The other day, they said, not all large language models are created equal.
Yeah.
And at the moment, every man and his dog, and I might say every fool and his dog, is using ChatGPT at the moment, right? Because it's so accessible. Therefore, what ChatGPT is learning is often quite ill-informed. And it was a point I hadn't thought of. So there's plenty of evidence that it will give a superior answer and a more detailed recruitment-specific answer than
that's the point of it, because what I didn't want it to do, like with ChatGPT, for example, to give you a completely segued example, one of the police forces used ChatGPT to try and enforce the law and get a prosecution, and the ChatGPT had hallucinated the law. It didn't actually exist. And they got in front of the judge, and the judge was like, this is an egregious misuse of technology. And it got booted out. So you can't always trust the responses that you get. I mean, 99% of the time, they're pretty good. But what I want Rekbot, the coaching zone, to do is really elevate people's game with proven strategies. This has sold an RPO. This has sold a statement of work. This method. This is how you do a potential cold call with your email outreach. This is what you're looking for. This has worked. It's examples of things that have worked gone in there.
Gosh, so that even as a standalone is incredibly valuable. Even before we get into the call simulation piece, which I know is the sexy end that everybody wants to try out. Okay, so let's just summarize. What can recruitment leaders expect if they engage with Rekbot? So they can expect iterative learning rather than just lectures. They can expect new situations to be dealt with, as it were, in real time, rather than having to get an expensive person in. And that this is very self-directed, isn't it? Without being, I'll only learn what I like learning.
The thing is as well, the leadership who actually invest in Rekbot and distribute it to their team members will be able to log in and see the progress of their team. So they're going to be able to identify either poor hires quicker or ways that people might be struggling, because Rekbot is going to give the feedback, and it's going to give a graph in terms of people's progress, or if they're flatlining, or if they're just that's not the one.
Yes. And that's invaluable. Sometimes when I'm speaking to my client, recruitment business owners, and they've got someone in probation, and this is a classic conversation. Like, I think he's good, but he hasn't built anything, so I'm going to have to extend his probation again, right? Now, to me, if you don't know your probationers' work in sufficient detail, you really need to get on it. You need to be listening to calls. You need to be looking at, is everything from his time management to his prioritization of candidates and clients. Yeah. But by then, it's quite late to fix things, isn't it? And if I could see that throughout that probation, that people are making good use of this and making good progress, I might take a different view. Anyway, okay. So we're unfortunately going to run out of time here. We've covered, it's very quick to implement for your business. You can monitor the progress of people who are using it. It's a unique large language model, and it's constantly learning, which is also great. I think people are going to be really excited about this. Will, you mentioned that you do have a special offer to tell the listeners about.
We'll call it the Alison Humphries 50% special discount. So anybody that that is listening has kindly endured my Black Country accent to the end of this podcast, I'll give you a 50% discount on your very first version that you get of Rekbot.
Brilliant. So if they mention the Recruitment Leadership Podcast or my name, then they can. Okay. And I know that you want to limit that to a particular number of collaboration partners, Will. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. I think for the first initial launch, we're going to set a certain set amount of tech companies, because this is also useful for talent acquisition teams. So we've got 3 tech companies already lined up that are quite open-minded. And we also want to get to about 10 open-minded recruitment companies who want to address some challenges with either hiring experienced people, because Rekbot, don't forget, could assess an experienced person and give feedback there and then.
Oh, so you could even use it as part of your selection process.
You could.
Okay, right. This is great. Okay, so how should people get in touch with you, Will?
I will give a link that people can to do the sign up for, which we could share on the post when this goes live.
Notes.
On the program notes, so that people can just click that rekbot.ai/sign up would likely be the domain.
Okay.
And we can get them signed up from there.
All right. And are you okay for them to reach out to you on LinkedIn as well? Or
yeah, absolutely, of course.
Okay, so that's Will Bourne, Bourne, at Rekbot, and also Rekall Consulting, his recruitment business. Will, it's been a pleasure to work through this with you. I'm sure there's going to be lots of people who want to get that competitive advantage at the earliest possible moment. So thank you for joining me.
Brilliant. Lovely. Thanks, Alison. It's great to see you.
Okay, and this has been the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. Thanks to Will. And if you'd like to talk to me, Alison Humphries, about a holistic exec coaching and a board advisory service, then please get in touch with me, Alison Humphries on FREP on LinkedIn. Thanks.
You've been listening to the Recruitment Leadership Podcast. If you enjoyed our podcast, please subscribe, review and share so that others can find the podcast too. We really appreciate your support. If you have any questions about the topics covered or wish to find out more about recruitment leadership, please email alison@recruitmentleadership.co.uk, referencing the podcast. We're also on LinkedIn, where you can follow Recruitment Leadership and connect with Alison Humphries. Thank you for listening, and we hope you join us next time for another episode of the Recruitment Leadership Podcast.